Hi, I'm Dan, your online tutor for this section, and I'm going to talk about different assessment techniques that you can use in education and training, and some pros and cons for each assessment method. Okay, let's start off with some of these assessment methods then. RPL stands for the recognition of prior learning, and what we do for this is we look at what certificates, awards, qualifications that our candidates have done in the past and see whether or not this matches up with some of the criteria that we're looking for. For example, if you've got a candidate that has to do a unit on health and safety in the workplace and they have already done a qualification or certificate in health and safety, we can look to see whether those skills directly cross-reference to our criteria that we're looking for. Great news for the candidate because they don't have to go over and repeat stuff that they already know. But from our point of view as assessors, we've got to be really careful that the assessment criteria do match. Sometimes they don't, sometimes they're a little bit woolly and we need to add a bit more detail on there. So a disadvantage is we have got to do a bit of research into that qualification to double check that it hits everything that we're looking for. Observations are a really common assessment method. This is where we'll go in and observe a candidate perform a skill or a task. The assessor will record this and use it later as evidence for their work, for their portfolios. It is really reliable. A really good benefit is it's reliable. We've got good, accurate information that has only just happened, so we know it's up to date. There are some issues, however. It is quite time consuming for the assessors. You have got to physically be there in order to record that evidence. If you've got 100 candidates all needing an hour or two's worth of observations, you're going to have to plan that very thoroughly. Questioning, exam, quizzes and tests. This is a really common way to test exactly what a candidate knows. We can do this with written questions, exams, or it could be oral. They're speaking to us and talking about what they know. If it is written, there are some disadvantages in the sense that some candidates really struggle to get information out of their head down onto paper. We've got to be able to cater for that. And verbal answers can be quite hard to evidence. You're going to have to physically record it with some sort of voice recorder, dictaphone, microphone, whatever that may be. So it can be technically hard to record that evidence. There are some really good benefits. It can be all pre-prepared. We can sit down, spend hours writing the perfect questions to make sure we're extracting the right information from our candidates. It is quick to do. We can just give our candidates an exam, give them an hour, and we've got a good detailed snapshot of their understanding in that field. Okay, witness statements and professional testimonies. This is where we have a occupationally competent individual that works alongside our candidate that can validate that our candidate can do a skill or a task. They will jot it down on a piece of paper and say that the candidate can do it and how they did it, and they'll just record that down and send that through to us. It is a great way as it provides an alternative judgment on an activity. Sometimes they will pick up things that we miss as assessors, so it's good to have a second opinion on it. There are problems. Can we confirm that this witness statement is reliable? Has it just been mocked up and signed? Is it not really that real? You've put in a lot of trust in your candidate and the person filling out that testimony. So we don't recommend using this that makes up a large quantity of our evidence. Maybe the odd one or two criteria, it will be fine, but it also adds a nice weight to the performance of what our candidates are doing. Okay, work products. Now, if our candidate is being assessed whilst they're at work in the same sort of industry and field, as they are working, they will be providing evidence as they're doing what they've got to do for their daily job. This could be records of communications, emails with managers, that sort of thing. It could be any reports that they've had to present to people. Could be any minutes of meetings. If the candidate has had to do that work for their job and it also hits the criteria that we're looking for, Why get them to do it again in an assignment? If they've already had to do it for their job, we can submit that as evidence. There are issues. It can contain confidential data. For example, if you're assessing a candidate in the health and social care industry, they may have patient records and things like that that they're working with, and it is not appropriate for them to be sharing it with outside agencies. So it can contain confidential data. It might also be difficult for us to prove that it's their work. It might be their colleagues' work and they've just grabbed it and changed the name or something like that. It can be quite difficult for us to prove it is a candidate's work, but very useful nevertheless. Projects and assignments. As assessors, we will be setting our candidates assignments for them to complete. It could be a question that they've got to answer. It could be to write a report. It could be an essay or a bit of research in their field. It's a great way for us to get a good understanding of where they're at. They can put all of their knowledge in one document and submit that one document. So from our point of view as an assessor, we get a lot of information quite quickly. From the learner's point of view, it can be quite time consuming. They might not have time to get it done. English might not be their forte. They might not be great at writing a piece of work that flows, and it can be quite stressful in that sense for our learners. If they haven't got a clear, dedicated focus, they can start waffling and it can get really quite a long piece of work, which is what none of us want. So there are some issues that you have to bear in mind. It's really important to use quite a range of different resources and assessment methods. Professional discussions. Now this is where an assessor or a manager can have a chat with the candidate about some of the assessment criteria. If they're answering it really well with a good level of detail and it shows that they understand that criteria and it hits the criteria for the assessment parts, we can use this as evidence. Now, we will have to record this somehow, so that is a technical dilemma. Usually we will record it, microphone, dictaphones, mobile phones, whatever recording medium that we need to do, and we can submit that as evidence. This is really good for the learner because they can get a lot of criteria quite quickly and they don't have to get their answers down on paper. Sometimes, however, the assessor can inadvertently lead the student to the right answers. That's something that you will have to be aware of. Not to lead learners to the right answers, that it's all coming from their own understanding and not from yours, from the assessor point of view.